It's Bavia? Bavia. Yeah. Are we now into the formal part of the meeting? Have you looked on to see who's on the screen? If we could look on your screen, Anne. So, all right, for a minute. Right. So I'm going to welcome everybody to the formal part of our meeting, Corporate Advisory Committee, as I said, our last meeting of the academic year. And so I'm going to ask the members to go, well, first of all, I'll ask members to introduce themselves, and then can we have any apologies for absence? So I'm Zena Brabazon, I'm a Cabinet Member for Children, Schools and Families, and I'm chairing this meeting.
Hi, I'm Cressida Johnson, I'm Labour Member for Crouch End.
Hi, I'm Ellen Weston, I'm a Councillor for Hornsey Ward and a member of the committee.
Hello, I'm Lottie Collett and I am the member for Woodside Ward.
Virtually.
We do have Councillor Dasnes.
Councillor Dasnes. Cheers. Can I welcome Councillor Dasnes, who is going to be sitting in on our committee. We're very delighted to have the Cabinet Member for Adults and Health, because of course our young people do grow up and may access adult services, and we want to have more linkage and more relationships. There's a much more smooth transition should young people need to have support from adult services. So Lucia, Councillor Dasnes, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thanks, Zena. I'm very happy to be there. I'm really sorry I couldn't be in person, but not feeling great today, but felt really important to join this meeting, and really pleased to be part of the committee and to support, as you say, Zena, work on better transitions, really good transitions, and helping our young people as far as possible, really. So thank you.
That's great. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We've got apologies from Councillor Islia Gosling, Councillor Felicia Opoku, and that's all.
Right. So, do we have any urgent business?
No urgent business, Chair.
Any declarations? No, I've had the declaration of King's College. Right. Let's go to the minutes. Anything anybody wants to raise in relation to the minutes from the last meeting? All the reports are really for noting, so it's not really like we have the actions and so on. So, is there anything anybody wants to raise, or should we just agree the minutes? Agreed. All right. Good. Oh, Anne.
It's not to do with the minutes, Councillor Brabazon. I just wanted to check with Bev. We've got a guest online, Matthew, and I just wondered whether Matthew wanted to introduce himself and to let us know what item he's here for, in case we need to take that sooner. I'm looking at Bev for...
Mike.
Thanks, Anne. I think it would be helpful if Matthew could stay for the item after we talk about the Champions model, and then Matthew could come in then. It'd be helpful if he heard what we're trying to do in Haringey and how he will be supporting us.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Brabazon, would it be okay if Matthew could introduce himself to the room? Lovely.
Of course, please welcome Matthew. My apologies for not being on top of that.
Oh, not at all. Can I just check you can hear me? Yeah. Okay. So it's lovely to meet you all, and thank you for having me along tonight. My name is Matt Raleigh. I work for an organisation called LIA, the London Innovation and Improvement Alliance. What that is in sort of real terms is the work programme for London's where they want to achieve things together across London as a whole with the vehicle that they use for that. And one of our pieces of work is around support offered to London's care leavers. I think I heard you refer to it earlier, but we call it the Pan-London Care Leavers Compact. So we can both tell you a little bit about that work later on. But it will also, as Bev said, be lovely to hear about what you're up to in Haringey, which I'm sure we can learn for that Pan-London piece of work as well.
So are you happy to be with us while we go through our agenda?
Yes.
That's okay. Thank you. Is that all right, Bev? All right. So if we can, we've agreed the minutes, we've welcomed everybody. I think, should we introduce the rest of the people on the screen for the meeting and go around the room? I haven't done that bit either. So all at 6s and 7s, very sorry, it's been a long week. Anne, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to the screen.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Anne Graham, Director of Children and Young People Services, Haringey.
Good evening. My name is Nazir Chowdhury. I'm Principal Committee Coordinator, and I am the shadowing clerk for this evening's meeting.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And my name is Bhavine, and I am the Principal Committee Officer. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Keith Warren, Head of Service for Children and Young People in Care, Placements and Procurement and Brokerage and Fostering Adoption. Sorry, thank you.
My title is shorter. Good evening, everybody. I'm Assistant Director, Schools and Learning. It's Jane.
Good evening, everyone. Jackie DeFalco, Assistant Director for Early Help Prevention and SEND, and I'm here in the capacity of the Youth Justice Service.
Good evening, I'm Lynn Carrington and I'm Designated Nurse for Children in Care in Haringey.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hajra Sheikh. I'm the named doctor for Children in Care, Haringey.
My name is Paul Sender. I'm the Designated Doctor for Children in Care for Haringey.
From Health, fabulous. And on the screen, may have introduced themselves, but I think for the record, for the formal meeting, I've asked people just to say quickly.
I'll go first. Richard Hutton, I'm the Council's Performance Manager.
Emma Camerton, Head of Service for Young Adults, and Hazelmere.
Pauline Morris, Head of Service for Engagement, Safeguard and Quality Assurance.
Heidi Cook, Service Manager for Children in Care and Placements team.
And
Unica Choku, Designated Nurse for Safeguarding Children in Haringey.
I think that's everybody, isn't it? So what I'm going to do, I have tried to put some sort of timings on the reports because we've got quite a full agenda. We do want to hear from Matthew, and we do want to hear what the link is to the Pan London Covenant and the bigger offer for young people. So I was going to say for Richard, I assume Richard's doing the report on the performance. If you could, I don't want you to race through, but if you could go to the key points, and I sort of put aside maybe up to 10 minutes or so for this, that's all right. Don't want to do, not do you justice, but if you could, because we've got quite a full agenda and there's an item where I think we do need to have a bit of a discussion.
Okay, I will do the potted highlights then. It says in the report there are 375 children in care at the end of March, and for an update for May was also 375, and that was also the number last Friday. So we're very consistent on that, and that ties in with there being a lower churn of children in care as well. We're having fewer entering the system and fewer leaving, so that's why the number's staying very stable at the moment, and that is well within our expected range of our statistical neighbours, so we're very comfortable with that number. Where it is slight change on it is the number of unaccompanied asylum seeking children has increased recently. We're now, it says in the report, up to 31 as of the end of the period, but as of this week it's 33 as of the end of the period, it's 31 as of the end of this week. So that is a big increase of 6 or almost a quarter over the last 6 months or so, but it's still well below our threshold of 49. So we've got some way to go on that, but we're still recovering from the lockdown problems. You've got this. So the other on the highlights on the reason for children coming into care, Absent parenting has now crept up the list as a direct result of the increase in unaccompanied asylum seekers, because that's what they fall under. Family and acute stress has fallen back a bit following the work we've done on that last year and the increase in absent parenting as well. We're doing very well on the plans with pathway plans, 81% above the 80% target. PEPs 97% at the end of the last term. We're hoping for a similar number this term as well. And care plans 87%. Placement stability is becoming more of a concern now. They seem a bit more volatile than they have been historically. It's still very low numbers, especially for the short-term one. Also for the long-term one, I should say that it's a smaller cohort. So it's not all children. It's just those who are under 16 and have been in care for more than 2 years. So it's a small cohort, and that is showing an increase in instability of placements. The other one that everyone always cares about is dental checks, which are up to 79%, which is the highest it's been since 2020. It's not where we want to be, but it is above the benchmarking for our statistical neighbours in all of England. So that is the potted highlights. Apart from Emma's sake, I'll have to say that 100% of 19 to 21-year-olds are in touch with the local authority, and we know where they're living and what they're doing. So that's
Good
it.
question. That's brilliant. Thank you. Really did race through. Is there anything, Bev, you'd like to add, or Anne, to the performance before we open questions?
Still not used to it, thank you. I am suspecting that Councillor Brabazon, that we'll have some queries around unaccompanied asylum seekers, given what, some of the topical issues that we're hearing in the wider media, and we're happy to take any of those questions. But the report, I think, shows solid and steady improvement quarterly. Some of those issues that we addressed with the pathway plans and the PEPs that are in place, and I'm fairly confident that you're going to see an improving picture continue. And whilst this report doesn't address any of the areas that Ofsted highlighted for further work for us, I'll come on and talk about them in more detail. So on this particular report, I'm commending you to sign off and ask us any questions that you want to have put.
Thank you, Bev. Thank you, Richard, and colleagues, for the work that goes into this. I've got one question, Bev, that's about unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and young people, which you may not know the answer to, and others in the room might. Councillor Weston, because of the legal bit, and then I've got another question that's about the construction of this report in relation to the Ofsted findings. So the first is that we know that there's I always get this wrong, the illegal immigration bill going through, and that there's speak of holding unaccompanied minors for 8 days now. I know it's, whether that will impact the way that young people are, transported to go to live in other local authorities. Will that have a positive, or do we know the impact that might be? And then the other question was about, do we want to review this report in the light of the Ofsted information? The answer might be no, but Councillor, if you'd like us to just take that discussion outside, so we'll either bring back an identical report, or we might add information in or take bits out just to update it in light of the monitoring.
So, to take the second question first, it's my recommendation that we, when we produce the performance report going forward, that the addendum, a specific addendum, is put before this committee and children's scrutiny to show the improvements in the areas identified. Now, we have to do it that way, because as we start to get ready for the implementation of Liquid Logic and our new LCS system, this is our recording system for moving from what's called Mosaic. She's retiring, and so we're adopting Liquid Logic. What we want to do is see how we can build performance reporting to take away from the manual reporting that of course will have some margins for human error, to report, to bring back to this committee. Now, we are not going to be ready to do that until at least the beginning of the new year. I hope, I shoot far, and I hope if we can make those adjustments, we can come back to you sooner.
Any questions from the committee?
I don't particularly have a question, but I just would want to pick up on Anne's point about holding children for 8 days. I don't know the answer to your question, Anne, but I just think it's worth saying for the purposes of the meeting that I think it's absolutely scandalous that the government is proposing to hold children in detention centres for that amount of time. So it doesn't help with your question, but I think it probably is worth noting.
I would like to follow, if I might, on the US issue, because the family court has ruled that unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are, for the purposes of all of this, actually children in need and therefore fall under the Children Act. And they have said, if I'm right, my reading of it, it's an organisation called Article 39, that that therefore when the forced local authorities look after unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and not Home Office, I think is I may have got that slightly wrong. And this arises from all this business of the hotels and the fact children in Brighton who went missing. So my question really is in relation, really following up from Ellen's point. I'm sure everybody thinks it's absolutely shocking and a disgrace what the illegal migration bill and holding young people for even half an hour in detention. So I don't know what the position is now regarding that and that legislation. Now we might have to come back with an answer, but it all seems to me now to be hugely problematic. And the court has ruled, and I'm not sure what went through Parliament yesterday, except I'm sure it's going back to the House of Lords.
And it was debated in the House of Lords yesterday. There were some marginal gains in them getting quite significant amendments being made to the proposed bill, and it's caused things to go all completely in array again. I think there is a real constitutional issue and a crisis that this is unfolding. So we have unaccompanied asylum seekers that this country is committed to treat as children. However, in an illegal immigrants bill, the word is hostile all by itself, that children are being badged with the same response and intervention as adults. And we will have strong views about even adults being treated in the way that are being suggested. However, it's an important for local authorities because the Home Office have the initial duty for processing unaccompanied asylum seekers and any other person who is seeking asylum in the UK. That is their duty and they must do it. The London councils met and the ADs, with the support of others, constructed a letter to say that we don't agree with the way that children are being treated, i.e. left in hotels for so very long. So it's a marginal gain, but it's been good to see that 8 days, and we hope for further protests in the parliamentary arena to bring it down to a standard of 3 days, and that they should be notified to the National Transfer Scheme at the earliest opportunity. So that's our position, and that has been shared not just as a representation from Haringey, but right across London. And I'm sure other parts of the country are supportive of our approach. I don't know if Emma wants to come in and say any words on that, the local impacts on some of the children we've seen, perhaps. Emma, don't feel you have to, but if you do.
Emma, after you've come in, I know that Lucia's got her hand up as well. So Emma, then Lucia, and then we'll see where we go.
I think just to say that the referral rate is rising pretty rapidly. We were expecting it to. We are getting referrals direct from the hotels. We are receiving children on the National Transfer Scheme, and we're also part of the Pan London Rota referral. Yeah, and we're working really, really hard to also establish which ones of our young people actually require age assessments as well as their child and family assessments, and making sure that we're getting the right health services in place for them at the earliest stage possible. We also are trying to find the right placements in a really difficult market at the moment. So there's varying challenges, I would say, around making sure that we've got everything in place, and working through some of those difficulties that we're facing.
The message is you're treating the young people as children, which is really what our position is, isn't it, as local authority? So thank you, that's really good to hear. And Lucia?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I do think there is with the migration work in our borough setting in my portfolio, I just wanted to say I do agree that we do welcome some of the changes that have been made, but they're still, as Beverly and others have said, they're nowhere near what they should be in terms of protecting those young people, and I think everyone agrees on that. I did want to just flag, and we've had the conversation about this, just that issue around age assessment and the challenge. I think the committee should be aware, and I think it's worth noting just that challenge about young people who've had an age assessment elsewhere, or who've had an age assessment by the Home Office, which they're contesting. So really what you have is young people who have been assessed as adults, but they're contesting that. But all that time while they're contesting, they're being treated as adults. So that might involve sharing a room with an adult, etc., etc. So, and I think there's significant challenges, and we've had lots of good conversations about what we can do and what we can't here in Haringey. But I feel like there might be worthy of taking this backward into a London conversation about that picture. And I don't know what others feel, but I just feel it would certainly not something that came up at the last London-wide meeting that I was at. But I feel it's a really important issue, and it does concern me, not least because when we don't have control over what that process, it's very difficult for us. We can't support the young people in the way we might hope to because they've been deemed adults.
Very helpful comments, and I think we'll be following that up separately in our meetings and also through the Haringey Welcome Ball, where a lot of this comes together. So that was really, really helpful. I'm going to move us on. Is there anything else in the performance report anybody wants to raise? We can see the progress. So we agree the report. Not that we can do anything else really, but we agree the report. And that's really great. Thank you, Richard. I'm going to move us on to the Ofsted inspection. And what I was going to say, I'm hoping that everyone here has read it, because rather than go into all the detail of the report, because it has been to the Cabinet and it's been in the public arena and it's gone to various boards, I think it really spend our time focusing on the action plan, and that Bev can take us through that, knowing that we got the good and we have one requires improvement within the inspection, and that's the focus of the action plan. But if there's anything you want to say about paragraph 59 in particular, do feel that you can.
I'll give the pleasure of speaking about paragraph 59 to our Director of Children's Services. That was you being cued in, Anne, actually.
I have to say that, I'm delighted with the inspection report, and everywhere I go I mention paragraph 59, and we have, some of you may know that we have budget fortnight, and I had to give a presentation yesterday, and I did all I could to hold back from mentioning paragraph 59. I think paragraph 59 is the culture that we want in Haringey, and I'm so pleased that that was observed by Ofsted and noted in the first way ever. I want to give thanks really to Matt, who's online. Matt did an amazing thing. We spoke about the inspection report, and I mentioned to Matt and to his colleague Ben paragraph 59, and Leah managed Leadership in Colour, which is work the directors are doing to be sure that there's more diversity within the workforce and in the work that we do as directors of children's services. And Bev, are you leading it with Jackie? But co-chairing it with Jackie, which is amazing, which is tremendous, and was speaking at the conference. And there must have been what, 300 people in the room at least, and on the screen was paragraph 59 from every. I honestly, I wasn't there to see it because I got held up here and there, but everybody else, but everyone in the room speaks of paragraph 59. I will get the T-shirt and share them out one day. Thank you, Councillor.
So what I was proposing, unless anyone unless you have any particular question about the content of the report, that we focus on the action plan, because that's where we can ask our questions. Ellen has one question.
It's not a question, it's a comment. And I just want to reiterate, now that the report is published and it's come to this committee, how utterly amazing it is to read this about how engaged children's social care. From my days as the lead member for Children's Services, this is like a transformation. It's reading about a different service. And I know there are people in the room who've been around for longer than me and will recognise that as well. And I just want to again congratulate everybody for all the work that's gone into it. It's a remarkable, remarkable achievement. And I never want us to forget how amazing it is, because when we do good things, I think we can just become used to them very, very quickly. And I think it's just important to recognise always the amount of work and the incredible transformation that's gone on here. So really congratulations everyone, and thank you.
Well, in the spirit of self-congratulation, I think, Ellen, we should say thank you to you, because you were there in 2018 in a very hard time, and I think you may even have appointed Anne. I think that, so I think we do owe you a big thank you. And for me, the other paragraph is, of course, really good, that it says something about good political leadership. So that was all right. And corporate leadership. So all in all, it was a very, very, very moving experience to hear that feedback. Yeah. And actually, it was also a very stressful 3 weeks for Anne and her team, and for those of us who were peripherally hearing it. So on that note, Anne's going to say one more self-congratulatory thing.
And it's to Councillor Weston for all your support when I started, and you were absolutely clear you wanted to know what the cost of the service was before we moved on, so there could be no cuts until we'd sorted out what the cost of the service was, which financially helped us on our way to do a zero budgeting exercise, and we got 7 million for investing into the service, and we're still reaping the benefits of that work now. We have the Maya Angelou Family Assessment Service, for example. So thank you for your support in my early days. Thank you.
So now I think we should look at the action plan and see maybe too early. You haven't written any progress because it's June, but if you could take us through I would say by exception, I was thinking, where you think we really need to report. Bev, if that would be helpful.
More than happy to. So in our packs, if we scroll down to what looks to me to be page 34, but in the running order 38 of 174, that centres us on strategic leadership and oversight. So you can see from Ofsted that the area that we've got further work to do is the experience of children in care, and the draft post Ofsted action plan that must be submitted on the 18th of July. We have been out to consultation with the workforce, with some of our partners, and I'm really pleased to have received some feedback from our councillors on the Corporate Parenting Committee and from Scrutiny. So the door is not closed, there is still time to come back, but I have to draw a line at Friday this week. I need to be able to tidy the report up, send it to my DCS to approve for her to send off, bang on the 18th without failure, close at 5 o'clock. So anything that we're all talking about tonight, if there are concerns or comments, please don't hesitate on tomorrow to contact me or to send me an email by midday Friday, please. All right, so the areas that we've identified, and Keith, our head of corporate parenting for children in care, is with us. I have to say that I am utterly delighted to have Keith on board and so impressed with his passion and tenacity and attention to detail. Keith has, I tell him he has valleys in his forehead often, and that's usually just his way of kind of unpicking problems. So there's been lots of days of valleys in the forehead as we work through the issues. The strategic leadership and oversight, I think, is clear. Anne has a stable AD team and a competent, intelligent, passionate AD team, and from early help right through to young adults, I think that we have considered some of the issues reflectively that Ofsted identified. We are not in contest with them. And so the report before you really tries to lean into the areas that we are determined to improve upon and to await their feedback after the 18th when we submit it. The report is constructed that sets out what Ofsted said, and we directly pull aspects of the report out and then link it to the areas we want to see improvement. The first, we must maintain the paragraph 59 through our recruitment process, and and to move further into our journey of reducing any dependables on agency workers replaced through our pipeline through permanency. There are services in our teams that we can manage agency, not in children in care. And so we've set ourselves a target to ensure that at least 90% at any given time of the our social workers in children in care are permanent. And one of the things we want to report to you on when we come in the new year is how far we've progressed that. There will be some changes and then challenges to it, but to support us with those changes and challenges, Matt is on the call, and we are now members of the London, not just the London Pledge, but also we've launched our own microsite with the rest of the London boroughs. So we can send the link and you can see how that microsite we think is going to contribute to attracting calibre candidates to this area of our work. Keith has launched permanency planning, and Keith, I don't want to steal your thunder, but do you want to just come and talk a little bit about the permanency process that we have now embedded?
Yeah, I think obviously Ofsted identified some significant gaps in terms of permanency planning. So we've reviewed it and rehauled it in terms of looking at the under fives. From 0 to 5 to ensure that we've got good traction for those children being placed for adoption and that the processes run much more smoothly. And we're now looking at those children, those cohort of children every 2 weeks to ensure proper oversight and the management is robust. And we're also reviewing the 6 to 17-year-olds every 3 months, and there's a better process in terms of tracking and oversight for that as well. And so what we're trying to do at the same time is ensure early permanency is embedded at the front of the service, and they come through to Hayley's team at the earliest opportunity, and we're also embedding early permanence at the same time as well. So there's a lot of work that we're doing to ensure that we've got oversight and the processes are right.
So one of the impacts of that piece of work that Keith is leading on is that our stability panel is trying to identify not just the children who are at risk of their placements being compromised, but actually looking at the themes and patterns that contribute to it, to placements being unstable. The biggest areas is this volatile private sector-led market that we're dealing with. And some of the behaviours and patterns around cherry picking, forgive me, Naz and Bavia, I'll help you with the words in the minutes. Children who they can charge local authorities higher costs where the children's behaviours are lower tariff in terms of acuity of need. And so through Caroline, who isn't with us tonight, and she's one of the other ADs, we've done some intensive work to start to build relationships with the providers that we want to continue business with, and also to progress our programme of capital builds and conversations with the local market to identify local provision that we want to ensure new children coming into care, including foster carers, in-house and IFAs, that we are building their skills. Keith is leading with me a piece of work with Islington, where we are extending a pilot project to ensure we attract more foster carers in the business. And I can see through the performance reports that we have more interest and that we're taking more foster carers to panel. And so we want to hand them over to Islington to help us jointly train them up so they're more robust as we start to think about where children are going to live long term. If at any time you want to act as our advertisers and help us recruit foster carers, please do not hesitate to contact me. Then we have the second area that we wanted to talk to you about is area 2. It's in your packs at page 39. Improve the identification of and the response to private fostering arrangements. So you'll see in the report that what Ofsted found was that we hadn't done enough across a partnership, and also that that we need to do something around the practice when we have identified the cases. That is already taken care of, but we've made some recommendations for your considerations. Most of you will know when I do the safeguarding training, I ask everyone to download the private fostering app and be evangelists for us. We need to, through the Haringey Children's Safeguarding Partnership, me and my team believe, is to have some focused, regular performance reporting for our partners to say what they have done about private fostering. Ofsted suspect that private fostering exists. We've not been able to spot those arrangements. The referrals that come into the system, when we assess them, they're not private fostering. So that tells us that there's a need to do some education. And we will, from September, work really closely. We want to get to the GP Federation, and we want to work with our DSLs in schools, and through the leadership group, put this as an action under what I hope will be our excellence board, so that every division of the safeguarding business knows that this is a priority. We would welcome your feedback on that section of the report. This is if Ofsted come again, I don't want them to even talk to us about private fostering. I would like that to be resolved, that we've corrected. I'm going to take you to item 3, the next item on our so it's the improvement and quality of life story work. I think that we already had a plan in place. We hadn't sufficiently executed it to get a favourable judgment. We have this week joined with the research in practice, and we're joining with a university who's going to bring their knowledge and skills around therapeutic life story work to build on the programme that we have in place. All of our children in care workers have done their mandatory training in this area, and what we want to do with our digital services is work out a method in the new system as to how we capture the information. So from the front door, Eve going to early help, and we're working with the schools. When Johnny joins your school, let's do some things around collecting information about them so that we tie this in to the trauma-informed approach that Anchor Project is trying to lead for us. So in the event that Johnny needs permanency through safeguarding, they come with early memories of themselves that the schools will hold and pass on to secondary schools and then to us. And we're going to add that. That's come out of the consultation, and we're going to add that into this plan. I'll pause there in case there's any questions or any other person to comment. Questions so far? Anybody? I have one. Do you want to go first, Dan?
It was about support from GPs really to the plan, and I just wondered whether our designated doctor wanted to say anything. Or our health colleagues, or all three health colleagues wanted to say anything. Thank you.
So Julie Thomas is our lead GP. Julie Thomas is our lead GP, Dr. Thomas, and we can certainly ask her to bring that up with the GPs. She meets the GPs regularly. They have a GP forum, so certainly it can be brought up about private fostering, and she can do a education. I'm sure she'll be prepared to do a seminar on that for them. Yeah, so I'll mention it to her. Yep.
Thank you, that would be much appreciated. And I just wondered, is there a way we can monitor referrals into the local authority, and then we can assess the quality of them if they're right, or you know, they meet threshold, as Bev has raised?
Sorry, GP referrals in, are you, or?
It's just that we get a lot of referrals, but not all, but they don't always arrive at being a privately fostered child. But Bev wants to come in.
So, and I think that our MASH operational group have conducted audits on the numbers of health referrals with a lens on GP referrals. That's coming to the partnership board. And we know that we've got some, that's really been very helpful, and we've got some, it's informed the way we can work with the GPs, and hence the kind of suggestion around the GP Federation, and working through Julie Thomas. What we're particularly after is something Lynn and the team have been discussing with myself. When looked after children move around, we want them to stay registered with their home GP. They can temporarily register with any GP near their placement to facilitate quick access to primary care. But what we think that will enable is that the home GP will still have connections to families in the borough, and when we're doing our LAC health reports, it's pertinent information could be pulled through if that's going to help the child understand their history. We have a lot of children that come into care with health challenges, and sometimes Lynn and the team do have to do more work than we would like them to understand the history, particularly if children are moving from place to place to place. We hope that this measure will stop that, and we have a single GP practice that holds our children for us going forward.
Not at all. No, I mean, thank you very much for sharing such a robust action plan. I mean, the question for me is thinking about where is the intersection between the health work and your work in order that they can mutually reinforce. You know, thinking about something like the life story work, well, I mean, that's a very good entry into the work that we would like to be able to work with you and others on around how to promote well-being. So what I'm thinking through, and it's not something today, is how this action, you know, what are the implications arising from this action plan for how we work and for how we work with others?
So just by way of illustration, every looked after child must have their red healthcare book. We used to have the green cards, but the red healthcare book should be with every looked after child, and their school nurses. When they come to health LAC medicals, they should be marked up, and it should show in the little few pages at the back that birth weight was this, where they are on the centile chart, when they had their immunisations, because that's the book that stays with them. And we had a little bit of an experiment with some of our children in Hazelmere, and we sat them down at a key work session and gave them their red book. I can't tell you what that did for their sense of who they are and their belonging. You know, your parents in this room understand. And that's one of the intersections. And outside of here in our health catch-up, we'll talk about some of the others.
Comment, now that we have a health team and you're participating in the committee, we feel it's like the wider context that provides some of the stability to achieve some of this. And I wonder if that's worth sort of a footnote in the plan somewhere. Bev, in the action plan, because having a stable health team, we haven't had that as long as I've been on the committee. So it's, you know, and just asking a question just gives a whole different dimension, you know. So I think that's really something worth saying. Ellen.
Thanks, Zena. It's on 3.3, which is on page 41. So it says about supported if needed by the clinical psychologist. And it's just a question about, sort of, I read Lynn's report, which is much later in the pack, and there's concerns from the health team around the ability of our children and young people to access mental health services. So it's just flagging a question. Are we confident that we've got the resource in place to be able to support that? And if we're not, how are we going to get it?
Question is on page 35. Ofsted told us that some older children with very complex needs have experienced multiple moves despite careful matching. I think this is a very relatively small group of children, but with complex needs. And this, I think, is a bit, we have to be sure that we can do that. And of course, you've already said what a difficult environment it is that we are trying to place children. And it raises big questions about transition. You know, we've got Lucia coming to our committee now as a sort of associate member, or whatever we call her, on the whole area of that transition. I think there's a lot wrapped up in that one sentence, which I think we're going to have to really be mindful of all the time. And I mean, money isn't really, but this is the very, very high end of social care.
Councillor Brabazon, as you know, that through the work that Jackie's leading on SEND and Pathways to Adulthood, and through the work that we're doing in safeguarding around transitions, that we have really driven the kind of the communication and building the relationships with adults. Just today, there was some really healthy discussions around efficiencies and different ways of working, because there's different drivers to help us move closer to the relationship we want for children. And we are thinking that we want to utilise the technological advances in Liquid Logic to dispense with a process that will mean that from the age of 14, adults will have a notification, the ordinary residents' understanding will be intact, and we can start doing those assessments far earlier. I think some of the concerns in the past has been around if children are assessed at 17 and then things change for them in 3 months' time, that they've got to do a Care Act assessment again. But what we want to do this time, and we were following that through over coffee after an initial discussion, is that we'll train up our workers to do Care Act assessments. And it's so the skill is shared across the two divisions, and we will then have some joint commissioning targets that we set ourselves. So just two simple activities. We're going to have further discussions later to make sure that's built into this.
I wonder if you shouldn't have an item in the plan.
I'm happy to take that and then make sure I consult with my counterpart in adults to let them know.
So we've got up to page 41. We've gone through private fostering. So we're up to we've done life story work. So we're on to
Zena.
Page 42 from there.
Councillor Desnevis is trying to come in. Councillor Brabazon.
Sorry, I lost the thread there for a moment.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Thank you. I just had my hand up, but I don't think you spotted it. I guess I feel really strongly that this area of transitions is a really important area of work for us. And particularly, forgiven my ignorance, but I wonder will that transition in terms of the money that follows a child that then becomes a young person, what impact that has. And I also wonder if we've had a lot of conversations in Adults and Health about how we prepare for how we prepare and make sure we have the right services in the right places, and have been several discussions about increasing the number of places within borough. And again, I'm new to this area in this committee, so if I'm barking up the wrong tree, but do you perhaps say that? But I feel it's worthy of a conversation in terms of us planning the places, and so that sounds very positive, having a notification and hearing at 14, but it does feel like even before then we might know, of course, needs change, but also I wonder, I'm a little bit concerned that at the moment we're arriving and we haven't prepared for that change in perhaps the amount of funding that's associated with a young person. Sorry, I'm sort of mumbling a bit, going on a bit, so just I hope what I'm saying is clear.
Councillor Desney Vicity, I understand, and I think that there is a need for a more detailed conversation outside of here, so I think we should pick this up. It's hugely complex. You may remember that 80% of our children that looked after a place outside of the borough. We don't have systems that connect. We didn't have joint commissioning strategies. We didn't have pooled budgets. It's difficult to get the NHS in the borough that the child is resident to pick up their responsibility in this, and we would have less problems if they were in the borough. Housing, the crisis is there are challenges there. But I think today was the first time I had a real ray of hope. I know Emma and Keith have been doing some intensive operational work with our counterparts in adults, and thanks to them breaking the correct concrete, the conversation today just flowed a little easier. So I have some hope, and I hope we can come back into the discussion we're going to have with you separately with Councillor Brabazon to say how we're going to build on those advances.
That is great, and I think it relates to the report that we've got, the safeguarding report. That's really why it caught my eye, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
To take you through the other areas, Ofsted said that we could do more around our supervision. We've asked our principal social worker to lead us in that area, and I've set out the how we're going to launch our obsessions, our core obsessions program, and so supervision is within the core things that we must have. This is not just this is supervision, reflective spaces to talk to workers about practice and what things mean for children. And to understand and to do some work which we have already completed to roll out frontline practitioners' knowledge of adoption and permanency. The last few areas, no, that was the last one. So midday Friday, last opportunity, door will shut then for anybody else that wants to comment on the draft action plan, and then I'll submit it to my DCS to send over to Ofsted.
Thanks. So you said a couple of times, Bev, about like space for reflection on practice and so on, and I obviously that's hugely important at all levels, and of course that will look different depending on the roles that different colleagues have within the service. Is that something that should be built into this action plan, that we want to kind of try to make space where possible for reflective practice in that way, and be explicit that this is part of our expected CPD, it's part of the process of social work and care that we want to provide in Haringey? I mean, presumably that feeds into your paragraph 59 as well, doesn't it? So, I just wonder if that's something that needs to be made a bit more explicit somewhere in this, even if it's in the introduction, that's part of the ethos that you want to encourage to thrive.
because you've said it so much and it is so important in any professional space. So that's my general feedback.
Councillor Weston, we're happy to take that recommendation and strengthen that in the report.
That's brilliant, and the action plan is almost there. Almost there. So we've got a week, send our comments in. But I hope that our comments tonight have been helpful. And thank you for the summary, and we'll just say well done to everybody again. Moving to item 8, we've got the slides here, but this is to do with the visit.
The champion.
Yes, from
Mark Riddell.
Yeah, from Mark Riddell's visit, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
So can you give us a quick update rather than go through? Everybody's got the slides and can see all the huge changes. So just give us an update on his visit. Would that be that all right?
Yeah.
Everybody.
So Emma and I have a negotiation. She's going to just tell you briefly about Mark Riddell's visit, and then we think this is a nice segue into changing the agenda ever so slightly, because I don't want to lose Matt, and he's got another commitment at 8:30, and ask Matt to come in and talk to members about the London pledge.
That's fine. And that would work well, and then we'll bring Matt's item forward.
Yes, so Emma will just tell us highlights of Matt Ridley's visit. Emma, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Bev. Oh, there's a bit of an echo. I just wanted to remind everyone that Mark Riddell actually visited us. He's the DfE lead for care leavers, and he's the National Implementation Advisor. And he actually visited us back in December 2021. And at that, he had an opportunity at that stage to really meet with various leaders across our agencies. He met with the service staff. He also talked to our children and young people. And he left us with, fantastic impression of our services. He was very impressed with the passion of our staff and really our working together. And he followed up with a letter with 18 recommendations. So he did a return visit to us in May this year, and essentially to hear what progress we'd made against those recommendations, what we'd taken forward, what we might have achieved. And really in your pack is the summary of the presentation we gave him, really to showcase all the work that we've been doing since he visited us. We're now awaiting the formal feedback. We haven't had our follow-up letter yet. As soon as we do, we will be sharing that, and also starting to make plans around any further recommendations he makes. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at the pack. I don't know whether anyone's got any specific questions that I can help answer.
Any questions? If not, I'll just say that it shows enormous progress and was a really good read. And again, what can we say? It's great to see things as they've moved along. And of course, the design of this was very good, very nice. Yeah. So I thought he would have replied by now. He seems to be so gung-ho. I'm surprised he hasn't written to us yet, but hopefully we'll get the letter soon.
I'll double check that it's not come in to Andy.
Yeah. Hopefully it will be a nice positive letter.
Yes, we know where he lives if he doesn't.
Matthew. Bev, Matthew, and...
So I'd like to just, Matthew's already introduced himself, and Matthew, we're just going to give you the mic and bring you straight in, because I know that you're under a little bit of pressure for time.
Oh, thanks. That's probably me misunderstanding the agenda. If I was able to share a couple of slides, and I promise not to overdo it, would they be visible, your ends? And in the council meeting room? Yeah. Okay. So I'll do that because a couple of these slides kind of save some longer explanation, and I think that will allow us to move to discussion and taking any questions a bit quicker. So I'm going to talk to you about a project sponsored by the Association of London Directors of Children's Services, so that's London DCSs coming together, called the Pan London Care Leavers Compact. And I'll just share my screen with you. I can go into slideshow. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see my screen. So I won't take you through all of the bullet points, but just summarising why those DCSs have looked to do this piece of work. And if there's one overwhelming reason, it's the bit that's in bold, point number 5, which is a wish to improve the consistency of the support offer to London's care leavers, and also in the process its quality. We are repeatedly told, we have been for many years by care experienced young people, that there are inconsistencies in the support offered to them based on where they've been in care, so the borough that's been responsible for them, and where they've eventually settled or where they've ended up living. And I think I've heard Bev say earlier on, and anyone kind of working in this sector in London will know that often those children end up living for periods or permanently settling outside of their home local authority. So those issues of inconsistency are really, really important in terms of the support that's offered to care leavers and their ability to access that support. So this project looks to address those two areas, building greater consistency in the support offered to London's care leavers, and in the process upping that quality as well. It's worth pointing out that some others have trodden this path, and we look to them and learn from them. So Greater Manchester would be one area where those 10 authorities have grouped together and looked to secure a number of common agreements for their care experienced young people. So just a quick section on how we run the project. I think it's really important to state at the outset that the London Children in Care Council, they're supported by an organisation called Partnership for Young London, are embedded at every level of this project. So they first pitched for it to those directors of children's services. They secured Mark Riddell's support. They sit on our governance board and they tell us at every step of the journey what we should be working towards, and also whether the way in which we're doing it is likely to achieve the overall goal of linking back to support care experienced young people effectively. So they sit on a Care Leavers Trust Board. It's quite easy to see support offers for care leavers as being the responsibility of local authorities, but I'd really emphasise that this brings together a much wider community partnership. So yes, we look at the local authority role in supporting care leavers, but we look to those statutory partners as well, particularly in health and education. We look to the voluntary and third sector, and increasingly we look towards businesses and other organisations as well. Many of you may have seen the sort of John Lewis adverts at Christmas, but that's reflective of a wider wish which we detect amongst businesses and other organisations to make a contribution. So because our work covers a wide range of areas, we need to be talking to different groups of stakeholders, often with specialisms in those particular areas. So this is how we group and structure our project around these themed areas. And what you can see on the screen, and I won't run through all of those just now, is an example of some of the things that we're either already working towards or which we think and are told by Care Experience young people are good areas for us to be working towards. So in terms of where we've got so far, we've been working with our health partners. So there's 5 integrated care system, that's the health organisation areas within London. And in 2 of those areas, not I'm afraid including yet North Central London, they have developed a free prescriptions offer for care leavers, or an exemption from charges for care leavers, and that work is under development in the remaining 3. So we believe it will be in place for Haringey's Care Experience young people very, very soon. And that health ambition is now moving on to look at dentistry and eye care, things which we're advised are sort of real challenges for Care Experience young people. And then probably the sort of biggest and most challenging area, which again you touched on earlier this evening, which is around mental health and emotional well-being support for children who've been in care. We've secured a 50% offer on reduction in transport costs on bus and trams for London's 18 to 25-year-old care leavers. We believe that will benefit 16,000 young people. It's not as much as we would like. We want trains and under the underground too, and we're continuing to work towards that. But we're going to take what we've got for now as we continue that campaign, and we're working on what is quite a complicated administration process, but to deliver that concession. But we believe that you will, your care leavers will be accessing that benefit this year. Turning a little more towards the local authority angle, we have 5 housing related proposals for local authorities in particular. I won't run through each of those just now, but I'm quite able to provide detail. They sit across different departments. So, for example, one is around council tax exemption, and one other is around a best practice example that authorities have joint protocols for care leavers between their children's and housing departments. We are also asking that local authorities look at and ideally sign up to membership with an organisation called the Care Leavers Covenant. The Care Leavers Covenant is a national DfE sponsored inclusion body that looks to bring together all the various national and local offers for care leavers and host them in one information space. That's one of the things it does, but one of the other things it does is it supports organisations, including local authorities, in the development of things like whole council approaches to supporting care leavers. So, so the idea that support reaches across the whole of the council's activities rather than sitting primarily with children's services. It also looks at things like social value procurement and where local authorities and others can build that into their offer. So those are the proposals that we're coming to. I just did have a quick check on Haringey's position against them actually, and it's looking very strong. certainly more so than some of your neighbours. But we'll be picking up those conversations via your directors and your corporate parenting boards. And that's really it for my presentation to you tonight. I think it's worth emphasising that this is not the limit of our ambition. So far, I've referenced some fairly sort of basic in nature resource type support offers. But on the 15th of May, that London those London Directors of Children's Services decided to adopt care leaving as their fifth strategic priority. And that's really given us a forum and a blessing to go out and be more ambitious across those partnerships. So I'd sort of leave with a watch this space message, and we will be looking to take on some of those really challenging areas, such as mental health support offer, such as some of the specific challenges that may face former unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, such as some of the really difficult housing areas that care leavers may face. But I'll leave it there for now, and very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That was really good. I think that was a presentation I saw at London Councils, which really did catch my eye, and I did ask that it would be shared more widely. So thank you very much. Questions? Comments? Anybody? Committee, then around the room. Anne, do you want to go first, or Jane?
Yeah, thank you. And I should say, Matt, that I'm the Assistant Director of Schools and Learning, so I was interested in the needs bit, so hi. And one of my questions is, in terms of, for me, something that we could do pan-London, is to really make sure we've got multiple points of access for the children in terms of post-16 provision. Because what we know is that they don't always fit neatly into a starting bang at the beginning of September, but it can sometimes take them a while to settle, or they can go into a course and not settle and then need to start somewhere again. And if we don't get those multiple points of access during the academic year, then they end up wandering for a year. And that's very demotivating, very difficult for them to then re-engage themselves as learners. So I'd quite like to explore that, be happy to help with that.
That would be so well. That is such a helpful and timely comment. We've just come out of a meeting of the Trust Board this afternoon, actually. We've got a guy called Matthew Blood from Islington as the virtual school head, who sort of takes the lead on the education work. And so we were talking exactly about what the higher education, the further education and other offers might look like, and what sort of ambitions we should set around that. That didn't come up, but feels so relevant and appropriate. So thank you very much for Jane, and for that, Jane, and we'd love to loop you into that work and you have a look at what we should be doing.
Ellen, you wanted to come in.
It's a linked question to Jane's, actually, Matt, and it sounds like you're already having these conversations, but it's just about the work you'd be doing with the universities in London, because those multiple points of entry are not as easy to manage in the sort of higher education sector, but higher education institutions are massive and are generally quite well resourced in London. And I do think there's a lot of space for universities to provide quite significant support to care leavers once they get there. So not just entry into, but once you are there, what do they do? So I hope that that's going to be part of the work, because I think there are a lot of universities in London, and I think that they could provide a lot of support for our care leavers, both in terms of being sensible about entry provision and entry access, but also then about providing robust and sensible support when students are there. So that would be my call on that sort of ETE front.
Yeah, again, that's sort of a hugely helpful comment. I mean, I don't want to represent where we are in terms of the HE and FE stuff, and obviously what we look to do is build consistency and make sure that the common standards across London is rising. So I think in terms of HE and FE, that's a journey that we're just starting on. So to have that guidance is really helpful. Again, it does reflect some of the conversations that were had today. So for example, the institutions should have a dedicated care leaver link worker, and that stuff particularly around how admissions are managed, and then how places are sustained and the support put in place so that students can flourish, were kind of two major themes. We also think that other areas may have learning for us. So I believe in the northeast of England, their HE institutions have come together and agreed some of those common offers. So we'll also be looking to their practice too.
And your another question?
It's a follow-up on that. Can I just gently suggest that one of the things that you might look into, and obviously I'm mentioning no institutions by name here, is data. So where a young person is care experienced, then the institutions have a common agreement that that is something that will be flagged and shared appropriately with their department and their teachers, because it is hugely challenging to get young people to sort of notify us as higher education institutions of some of the particular factors that might have an impact on their ability to flourish. And I think if institutions from the off agreed in London that actually this is something we want to flag, this is something that we want to nurture and be aware of so we can provide support, that would be hugely helpful.
Yeah, again, I sort of really welcome the comment, and just to say that it reminds me of a similar conversation that I had with a housing association who was talking about how they sometimes only found out that quite often they only found out that someone was care experienced at a point where a tenancy had sort of broken down, almost to the point of not being able to be pulled back. I think there's probably some complexities around that, around the sensitivity of the information and sharing it, but totally take the point that that baseline knowledge is needed if you're going to provide the support and wraparound.
I have a couple of questions, Matthew, if that's okay. First one is, actually, you mentioned housing associations, and you may know that there are what they call the G15, and so presumably, well, I would hope that you've got some connections to meet with them, because they are the major housing providers in London. So in this borough, for example, the big housing associations like London Quadrant or Clarion, and I can name some others, but they're big housing associations here in this borough, and there'll be different ones in different boroughs, but they all form this consortium. So it might be worth making some connection with them if they're going to be social housing providers for young care leavers, so there are some common standards. It is a really quite difficult area with housing associations sometimes because they're very fragmented. But they do have this G15, sounds like a G7, doesn't it? It's called the G15, and that might be worth following up. But my other, so I don't know if that's a helpful suggestion, but I do think it's an area, housing for our young care leavers is crucial. But the other area I want to ask, whether the Pan London group, the Compact, has any influence anywhere in trying to bring children's home, getting residential provision in London, because this is an issue for London councils, an issue for all London boroughs, having to find provision so far away, and then all the issues about monitoring, accountability, commissioning, and all the rest of it. And so I don't know how that fits with local authorities in making this more of a hot issue. We've seen in The Guardian the other day, big headline story. We know we've got stuff on our agenda tonight, and this is a big issue for authorities because of the vagaries of the private market. So I'm interested in your view.
Yes, so I'll pick both of those areas up. So the first thing I'd say is the Care Leavers Compact started from pretty humble origins. Although the DCSs wanted it to happen, we were reliant on a very small amount of startup money from the DFE, which has long been spent, and a lot of goodwill from a lot of that community partnership that I referenced. And possibly as a result of that, we've had to kind of pick areas one by one. If you look across all of those ambitions, we haven't been able to sort of, up till now, sort of work with high levels of energy on all of them concurrently. So around housing, but we're getting there, and we're branching out. So around housing in particular, our first focus has been around local authorities. But we've just started that conversation with Clarion in particular, and they've been really sort of great in those initial conversations. They flagged their interest and their wish to be engaged. So we have a meeting of our housing group next week. That will be the first one that hasn't been focused on local authorities, but will focus specifically on housing associations, both their role, but also to pick up the words that you used there, which I think you said was fractured, because one reflection I'd have about the work in this space is that you sometimes do have quite a lot of energy and quite a lot of things happening that just aren't necessarily linking well together. So at all levels, whether you're talking about businesses or housing associations or others, the questions will be, well, how does their activity link back to individual care leavers, their positions, and the roles of those who are kind of working most closely with them? So getting that system to work together will be a really big theme for us, and will be one of those themes for that initial housing association conversation next week. And it's only through them actually that I'm aware of the G15, and we think that will be the start to brokering a wider conversation with the other 40. In terms of the other work, one of the other 5 priorities of London's Directorate of Children's Services is around resources and commissioning, and that's got a very strong focus on residential placement commissioning specifically, recognising exactly the problem that you described. So that's led by a colleague of mine, it's led by a DCS called Chris Monday from Barnet, and a colleague of mine called Frank Offer, that's looking to bring together sort of London's challenge, but also its influence and its kind of purchasing potential to really disrupt and redesign that market, which I sort of struggle to describe as anything other than broken, really. So he would be better placed to give you a fuller update on the progress of that work, but just to emphasize that it is one of those parallel strategic priorities, and kind of to some extent goes hand in glove with this work.
Helpful, thank you very much, and good luck with Clarion. I think if you talk to any councillor who's done a lot of casework, you would find lots of intelligence about dealing with housing associations. It's very, very difficult. I think my colleagues would all agree.
I mean, we can maybe do with some of that insight in the room. So maybe too late, but be really happy to have others join that meeting, so I can circulate the details through Anne Bev.
Thank you ever so much. And did you want to? So I think, is any more comments or questions? It's been really, really, really interesting hearing about this, and it widens our knowledge and so our overview of the whole system, because it's so much bigger than just the borough. I know on the agenda we've got the Pan London Covenant, which this is it. So we've done those 2 items, the covenant and the compact together. So thank you ever so much, Matthew. You're most welcome to stay to hear the next item, which I think is going to be you introducing it, Bev? Or?
Thank you, Matt.
It will be me. Thank you so much, Matthew. And I thought it was helpful that Matt came and spoke to us, because we are now officially trying to work our champions model. And I just thought it would be reassuring to hear that there is a Pan-London piece of work happening that will support what we're trying to do. So I'm really grateful to Matt for coming tonight.
On the next item, we're moving to the item 9 now, which is the report about the Hesley Group. And I'm assume people have at least read the executive summary, possibly the conclusions and some of the stuff in between. So I was going to ask you, Bev, to take us through the highlight, what you consider key points, and then that we have a discussion. I think it's I'm really pleased that you have put this on the agenda and that we're having this discussion at this meeting because of the sort of not generic, the universal issues that it raises. If you don't mind my giving an introduction in relation to when things go wrong in safeguarding. And I have written a note here saying something like same as every time, something like that on there, and every serious case review, which is what this effectively is. So if you'd like to introduce, and then we'll ask questions.
And I will just slow my pace as I talk about this report. It is incredibly helpful, and I commend the way that Operation Luma Alpha has dealt with this issue. When the news first broke that children in the Hesley group had suffered harm, physical, sexual, and emotional harm, it really shook the profession, and we went into a period of disbelief almost after some of the horrible stories that we'd all experienced in relation to Winterbourne, and the plethora of recommendations that we felt had sealed up any chance of this ever repeating. And then as Doncaster with the national panel have led the review, we realised that some of this was evidential, this was real experience, and for us as corporate parents, it really raises the way that we deal with risk in the system. And so the risks in this system identified that a strategy of working with the private sector is really important, and that we need to pay attention to when we're placing children far away from home. Placing them in a given unit is not enough. That what we really have to do is to make sure that the entirety of who the child is, every part of them, from who's going to cut their hair, the skin they're going to use on the cream, the type of toothbrush and who's speaking to them, whether the Lado knows, every aspect of the child must be detailed, in a detailed fashion, set out in their plan. And that we need to, like good parents, ensure that the school the child attends and the people in the community know that that's our child. And if they're worried in any way, that they are to tell us, and we are the parents for them. So in finer language than I've just put in this room, phase 1 of the report sets out some recommendations. And I thought it was important to bring that to you tonight because Haringey has been well supported by our colleagues in health, the ICB particularly, to conduct our own review of our specific children. Now, Chair, we have 3 children who are in scope. That is, and 2 children who we know their investigations are in place. Those 3 children and all children with complex needs that belong to Haringey have had a joint visit, and we're going to continue to do those joint visits. Pulling on the Regulation 44 inspector to accompany us and to see children in those settings. It doesn't matter where they are. If they're placed as a result of SEND or they're placed as a result of safeguarding needs, we're going to continue to do those visits. We completed the first visits based on the recommendations and finding of this phase 1 report last year. We've completed the second round of visits, narrowing it down to 2 that we were a little bit worried about for revisits, and I'm meeting with the team on Friday to look at the outcome of what they found. We have also developed our own joint quality assurance process, and outside of conventional complex care panels and other forums, we meet regularly to ensure that the IRO system and our own eyes on the child is intact, and we're satisfied by triangulating with the LADO, the host authority, the education setting, what's happening for the child, and we've now just admitted any visitors, parents, carers that are going to visit the children. So for the current cohort, I can say, to alleviate some of the concerns and anxiety this report may provoke, that our current cohort of children are taken care of and are safe. We had to move one child closer to London, but that's because the skill set in the home wasn't causing him harm, but they weren't able to meet his need. And I was just struck by the demands for 3-to-1, 4-to-1 for a child of a very tender age. And we mustn't manage risk in that way. So the findings of these reports have gone to our Haringey Children's Safeguarding Partnership. We intend to have further discussions in the meetings with health and the system that we're using. As I've just described, Catherine Collins and I would like to come back on another occasion and share more detail with you, so the themes and patterns of what we found on those visits. And I think that's probably as much as I want to put in a public forum about our response to the findings from phase 1. Phase 2 is now with us and challenges the council to look at its HR recruitment processes. That's the big finding from phase 2, and we're having a meeting with the national panel on this operation at the end of July to hear the first sounds of phase 3 recommendations. So this is not going to go away anytime soon. It will go through various stages because they are committed, the leaders that are involved in this, to, with rigour, go through every stitch and corner to ensure that they've not learning from the Winterbourne experience, that we don't repeat the patterns that we saw here.
Any questions from home? Because I've looked at this and I've got a lot of questions. I'm not sure it's all we'll do tonight, but are you okay, members, if I start us off? I suppose, listening to you, I have written quite a lot of notes here about that. The first thing I did write was same old story, sorry to say. And that was on the conclusion, page 135, abuse and neglect flourished due to lack of oversight, limited professional curiosity, poorly exercised accountability, etc. And as a local authority, we are not unused to some of these issues. So it did read a bit like that, but of course the subtext, I wanted to ask whether, as a result of this report, to which you're no doubt completely immersed, whether any of these lessons have gone to national government, because until national government do something about how residential care is managed, run, commissioned and delivered, our hands are very significantly tied, it seems to me. So I've sort of answered my own question, but I want to ask whether the government is being held to account the way local authorities are being held to account for what I thought was a very clear report.
So the national panel have made some very strong recommendations to the DfE and the Department of Health. And that's spelled out in a little bit more detail in the phase 2 report. I think there's been greater requests put to Ofsted around the regime that's being used, because the report sets out that Ofsted rated many of those homes as good and one was outstanding. And so providers, brokerage placement teams like ours would see that and have some confidence. What we do now under Keith and Haley is that we try and triangulate and ask our placement team to check. All right, so Ofsted say this, let's just check with the local authority and the LADO and see the Reg 44 visitors report to ensure that we've got different assurances. And in our placement planning meeting, I am insisting that the placement planning meetings are held in person, that we go up and see these units. I want to see where our children are being placed. I would never send my own child to a place I hadn't visited. And Keith has been to Scotland, Liverpool. He's getting to know the UK very well. So yes, Councillor Brabazon, long answer to your question. This, I think we are holding our breaths around phase 3 report and phase 4 to see if this will generate into any legislative changes. We'll see.
I mean, I'll come back to my next one. Go on.
I just wondered, Bev, thank you very much for that. And Keith, thank you very much for the mileage up and down the country. I just wondered whether there was an opportunity for, on occasions, for health colleagues to join the visit with Keith, if that doesn't already happen, just because they're joint funded placements usually. Jane wants to come in after me. Joint funded placements usually, and we've got a joint responsibility there. And Jane, you wanted to add?
And sometimes I've done joint visits as well in terms of education, because what we know is these children were being educated and were placed together, and yet no one was picking them up, and that join up wasn't there.
And just to help our colleagues, the quality assurance process we've got in place, we have a safeguarding nursing practitioner that comes on the visits with us.
And the nurse liaises with us before she goes, so we'll have a copy of our health assessment and follow up, and I'm attending the meetings as well, and I'll be there Friday. Yeah.
May I follow up? The report talks about the implication of the wider system. So this is about children and young people with most complex needs. Am I right? They were slightly older. So are the children that are in our own borough, but
yeah, so the age range of the children were from about 10 years old up to 15, 16. For Haringey, our children were clustered around the older, at the higher end of the age range. Councillor Brabazon and members, when the news broke, with disbelief or otherwise, our social workers went up and stayed with our children until we moved them out of those homes.
But I know that our social workers were really quick off the mark as soon as you knew, because I was told that. But my question, it's not really a question, it's what the learning is from this and what the implications are. This is for people with the most complex needs. We've discussed the issue of complex special needs a lot of times, many times, and the issue of the impact on families and the whole family unit and children and young people ending up in residential. So the whole of this area is something which I think we may need to focus on more, particularly the whole issue of transitions, the planning that we were talking about before. That's why I think what was in the Ofsted report, this gives us a bigger insight, but also in our own efforts to see how we can bring children back to the borough, which brings us to safety valve and all of those issues. So this is a whole system issue. This report pushes us, a bit like an Ofsted inspection, pushes us to do something because of the importance of it. It may not be in the national headlines, it was, but this is something which for local authorities is a very big report, it seems to me. Maybe I'm gilding Lily a bit, but it seems to me it is a very important report about most vulnerable people, complex special needs, who may be more likely to end up in residential care at vast cost.
I mean, the lens in which I see the work that Jackie's leading for us around the safety valve with the team, is that we're not waiting for the children, the needs of the children to warrant having to go into residential. I can see a lot of work has been and thought has been given into prevention, early intervention, building the capability of parents, looking at SEMH type school provisions, you know, pushing back at other agencies and partners to pick up their responsibilities, particularly around speech and language therapy, and so I can see that that's built into the programme. But I mean, I can't speak to the detail; it's not my area of expertise. And in another time, when Jackie's had a chance to be briefed, she might come back and say how that she and I can talk about how the findings here relate to both the SEND sufficiency strategy and the school estates piece of work and the lack sufficiency strategy. And we need some time to sit around a table, triangulate the three further and make it relevant to some of these recommendations and come back to you.
One more point and then we're...
My DCS and my leader plotting.
I can make one more point because I think it's such a, I mean, maybe this is the wrong forum to have this big discussion, I don't know, because we're hearing the report, but where do we get the chance to really talk about it? But it is actually a reference to the ICB and the role of the integrated care boards around commissioning and so on because of the issues of SEND. So I think we might want to take that back to, I'm not just health and well-being, but wherever it goes, into the health structures, which of course you have to be Einstein to grasp, and see what the implications are about this with the integrated care board, which I think are a real opportunity actually for us because of the wider London, you know, it's like 5 boroughs. So that's on page 131 for the health people.
The report has been shared and we track it. What we perhaps could do much better on is widening the audience of the people that we're speaking to about what changes we're making. We've tried to first make sure that our children are safe, well cared for, the standards that we've set are being implemented. So we've tried to deal with that bit first. The next bit that we've got to get to is, actually, I don't want my child living 20 miles away from me.
Yes, well, I guess I mean the lesson to be that's less unpleasant. I mean, the lesson to be drawn is if you're vulnerable and you've got no voice because you've got autism or another problem, and you're put very, very far away from people who can look after you. It's a recipe. And I guess today today we know about it in this particular environment. I just wonder about what about all those other environments, and sitting with you, a complex care panel, and a child or a young person who's been involved in grooming and is then sent far away to a remote place to remove them, to mitigate one risk. So the question, I suppose, is for those kids who are very, very far away, do we as health and does everybody else have enough scrutiny, given that being far away puts you at increased risk? I'm sure the answer from a health perspective is not, but...
I think you know. So, I mean, I think the processes that we've got in place puts a lot of the responsibility for those checks with the lead designated nurse from the ICB and with service. What we want to do is widen that because with the best will in the world, we're able to commit to quarterly visits on top of what the social workers do. And we're committing to skill up the social workers so they start to do things like, when I spoke to our social workers, they weren't looking in Koshi cupboards, they weren't looking at, they weren't touching base with the GPs in the area, they weren't talking to laddos, they were going to see how Johnny was and spend time with him, and those wider checks they didn't have the skill sets to undertake. Also, we're asking our IROs to have a watching brief in this area and through the LAC review process. So we're activating existing processes, but there is a need for a more dedicated piece of work to go beyond children with complex health needs and to look at children with high-end trauma. That means they have to be placed far away, particularly if they are at risk and have been involved in criminal exploitation. So at the moment, the market is such that we want to keep children safe, and so sometimes we are forced to support children's challenging needs in places very, very far away that our colleagues in SEND can't help us with because they're outside of the UK, UK border. I think that's how it's phrased, in Wales and other places. So we do need a whole systems conversation about placements. Closer, the better. That's the overriding message in this report.
Thank you. I want to say I'm really personally grateful that you've brought the report to the committee, because I do think these reports should be widely disseminated, and we probably, even as a lead member, may not have seen it. So I do think it's really important that we start this discussion and that there is an interface between the politics and the operational on this. So I'm sorry if it's gone on a bit, but I think that's probably a really important thing to do. So shall we move on to item, whatever the number is after this? Go
Number 10.
Item 10, and I think this is a verbal report. Oh no, it's the CIRO, sorry. And that's on page 157.
And Pauline has agreed to step in for this item. Naz gives it. Naz, who's
we'll allow you to have a break, Bev.
Hi everyone. Okay. Did you want me to share the slides with someone?
So we'll be quite quick.
Okay. Did you want me to share the slides, or is somebody going to view them? Yes. Okay. Bear with me just 1 second.
Chair, can I make a suggestion for time that the slides were part of the pack? So, Chair, I'm assuming that everyone's had an opportunity to read them. And so, Pauline, if you're comfortable with that, because I know you've been waiting a long time, that we would, I think the Chair would invite questions.
I think that's fine. I was going to say much the same thing, really. We've got them in the pack in front of us. So if you go through the key highlights on the principle of what the key highlights or exceptions, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem. Thank you very much, Councillor Brabazon. Okay, so you're aware that we've got an action plan, and IROs, their primary focus at the moment is to really strengthen their resolve in meeting the needs of the children looked after. So they're playing an active part, and they've done an awful lot to really improve the consistency of the midway meetings, the monitoring. They're now meeting regularly every week with the Children in Care Service, so they are promptly identifying any issues, any wicked issues, finding resolutions, putting them in place in a very timely way. They're working on the life story work. They're supporting practitioners. You can see from some of the data on one of the slides where it shows you the IROs have done an awful lot of work with our children in care to encourage and strengthen. You might remember previously I told you 1 or 2 had actually chaired their own review. We can report 21. Fantastic improvement, and we're really pushing that agenda because it does so much to empower them, not just in terms of taking care of their review and managing that process, but developing their life skills. So it's got a multifaceted element of advantage to the young person. So the IROs are doing a lot of work behind the scenes to meet the objectives of the plan, to stabilise the placements. They're attending various panels and working very closely with our children in care team. On that note, what I might do is invite you to put any questions to me you might have, because I'm conscious of time.
That was very succinct. You passed your English language précis on that.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you. I think my question is a bit like I can see, and I really valued the summary about all the progress that's been made, and it's evident that progress is being made. On the feedback side, there's a question, what would you keep the same? And my question really is, what needs to be different? So it's great to have positive feedback, but where are the gaps? So I think it is both within the IRO service, where improvements still needed, and then in terms of the work of the IRO service, what need to be the areas of focus?
Thank you, Councillor Weston. So one of the things that we've identified, which is a gap, and we're currently doing some work with our partners in practice on to secure some training for the IROs in how they communicate with children and young people who have got speech and language needs, so that they're better at being able to enhance their voices and participation. Another one is the legacy from the pandemic. Believe it or not, we've got some of our young people who are actually voting in a very dramatic way and saying, I don't want you to come and meet me in person. I'm quite happy on my mobile phone. They've become too digitalised and we want them to become more personalised. So we've got another bit of a challenge with some of our teenage cohort because they've gone into that domain. But the IROs are doing a lot more work behind the scenes to keep in touch with young people, make the odd phone call, especially if there's been something bubbling in the placement. It may not be a fragile placement, but we're making sure that it doesn't become so. So there's that regular liaison. They've got text messages going on with the young people. They might turn up in person, do an impromptu visit, or they'll touch base with someone that's doing a Regulation 44 visit, or the social worker, but they're finding ever increasing ways to enhance their presence in the minds and hearts of the children in care, because we have to do that as well as doing the statutory functional bits. It's about bringing them with us on the journey.
Any more questions from the panel? I had one which was really about how it links to the Ofsted action plan, to see that what's in, not a question, it's a comment, that what's here gets integrated into the action plan to make sure that we maximise everything that's being done. So it wasn't really a question, it was a comment. That's all.
Thank you, and that's very much an integral part of this, Councillor Bowers-Zone. The IROs are also participating in enhancing the skills of our practitioners on the work front in terms of the life story work, and lots of other bits and pieces that you see in the other data earlier on that Richard spoke about, they're actively pursuing as well.
All in all, it's all very, very positive, and I think, you know, really the Ofsted is really helping us move on. Support and challenge, all that stuff. So thanks, Pauline. I'm sorry we kept you waiting, and Lynn, I'm even more apologetic. We've kept you waiting even longer. But perhaps next time we'll reverse it and put the health first. So when I was an officer, and my service was always at the bottom of the agenda. We used to say with libraries, who was going to be at the bottom, libraries or play? So that's how it used to be. So over to you.
So the annual report will be presented to the Whittington Health Safeguarding Committee, and then it will be brought here. So that will be at the next, hopefully by the next committee meeting. So these were just some of the plans and key areas that we had for the year and what we would, how they've been achieved. And if we go down the list, then obviously we've got the designated and named doctor that's completed. We haven't managed to complete the number 2, which is for after the initial health assessment. The report should be made available for the first looked after children's review, and that's because the initial health assessments don't always they don't take place always within the first 20 days. There's numerous reasons why that can happen. One of them's been the consent, and we're working towards that. So we're going to be meeting with senior managers to be changing the current consent form that's been approved. So we're hoping that will enable us to get the appointments really so that the children are seen within maybe 2 weeks of coming into care, so that then the reports will be available, because it's so important that we highlight the health issues at the first LAC review. And we are monitoring that. We've got a very good admin system going where we're regularly checking in with social workers if we haven't got consents back. And then of course we've always got, it depends how many children come into care in a given month to whether we've got enough appointments for those young people to be seen. I think that's quite crucial, isn't it? Because we don't always aren't always able to see them within the time scale if we've got lots that come in, and especially when the appointments have to be, we have to do 2 appointments because they failed to attend the first one. And that's happened regularly in the last month, I would say. We've had young people not attending.
And before as well, not just the last month.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing issue in terms of not brought, child did not attend or was not brought to the appointment.
But we're working to hopefully improve that. We secured funding, and we've interviewed for a next extra nurse who will be starting hopefully in September. So that will make a huge difference to the team, because then our team will be complete. Regarding the immunisation updates, I'm working with the virtual school and also public health to increase the immunisation uptake of children in care. The rate is low at 65%. I think I mentioned it here before that some of that's due to the flu immunisation being part of the national schedule now, and lots of young people not having the primary age school children not having the flu vaccine. So we've, as I said, we've worked with the virtual school, and we're going to be ensuring that consents can get out to the social workers. They're electronic now, so that we can, wherever the children are placed. So we're hoping that that rate will be higher next year, but with the extra nursing capacity we've got, we'll be able to chase it up more. Yep. The next part about the unaccompanied young people having a specialist clinic that they're referred to following their initial health assessment. We're working with the other 5 teams. There's 5 teams in the ICB, and we all have the same system, and we all use we're using UCLH at the moment, and we've been discussing ways that we can get the children seen sooner, but possibly be able to get everything under one umbrella, so that they don't have to go to several different appointments and then repeat the story yet again. So that's a bit at the moment, we're still trying to work through that, whether that can be done. It's quite complex to have to bring sexual health and initial health assessments, plus the screening all under one umbrella. But that would be ideal. That's what I'd really like to see happen. Yep. Emotional well-being, I think, is probably our biggest concern at the moment for our young people coming into care. Huge trauma, a lot of young people have experienced throughout their lives that affects them, and we want young people to be able to access timely CAMHS support when they need it, irrespective of where they're living. And it's a huge problem at the moment to get children seen promptly. There has been the Commissioner has met with us recently, and hopefully there's going to be extra funding made available to address some of this, so young people can get seen. I think the IROs and social workers would also agree that this is a real problem with the emotional well-being of young people. And then going on to just the data, the figures are all there. The annual figure of those children that have been in care for 12 months or more, that's the reported figure for at the 31st of March every year, and 95% of the children had an up-to-date health assessment. Some refused and don't come, so that's why that figure is only at 95%. We'd be much happier if it was more like 98%, but you know, 95% is what we're working with at the moment. And just if anybody's got any questions or anything that I can answer.
Cressida.
Yes.
I think I've put it on. I was thinking in relation to the life story work, and you're obviously getting quite a lot of information about the young people, things like their immunisations and all that. Are you able to input that into, like, in a multidisciplinary team kind of way, so that, you know, for instance, if someone hasn't got that all-important red book, so that they can still get the piece of work that was being talked about earlier done? Because can you do a bit of reconstruction in that sense?
Yeah, so what we do, if they're, when we do the either 6 monthly or annual health review, because if they're under 5, they have 2 a year health assessments, we list all of the immunisations that the young person's had on that health assessment, and a copy of that goes to the GP and also to the foster care or the residential home that the child's living in, and the social worker gets a copy of that. So we always list the immunisations. Wherever possible, we track all of the details of birth history and what's happened to the child health-wise, and that's always incorporated into the reports. If they're born within UK, usually we can trace all of those important details. Obviously, if we can't, if for the unaccompanied young people, you know, from abroad. But that's all part of their annual report. And we also do a care leavers summary when they leave care, and all of those details are given to the young person, so they've got details of their health, and that's also uploaded to the social care system called Mosaic. And we always go through, when we see a child at their last health assessment before they leave care, so around 17 and a half, we always go through their medical history with them, you know, and for some of them, you know, they had no idea where they were born, or what they weighed when they were born, or how many weeks they were at gestation. So that's very, very important, you know, and that's the time that a nurse will go through all of that information and then answer any questions, really.
Can I cover that?
Yeah,
that
yes.
does answer the question, and no, that sounds brilliant, because that kind of information is just it's so key, and actually it comes up as for health risks later in life over and over again, like, so if when a person's pregnant, if they don't know if they've had the MMR or whatever, so that interagency work is super important.
Yeah,
it sounds brilliant. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Add anything about
Anne had a question.
Yeah.
If the doctors want to come in, and then I've got a couple of questions.
I'll be very quick and probably therefore outside of the meeting rather than here. Like the issue of consent, I think this is an issue nationally, so it might be helpful to speak with other local authorities, you know, to join in partnership about what they do, because I remember it from another local authority, so it's not really, and I've got some other.
Yep, so we've done that, and the new forms designed after our previous designated doctor had also liaised with other areas.
Excellent.
And August we're meeting with the teams to discuss it, aren't we? Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. And I wondered about and again, not really for now, but for another meeting, is there an operational meeting that performance data goes to for take-up or not, non-attendance, so that that's all discussed to see what we can do? Not really for this meeting, but, you know, having that meeting going to Keith and Bev in some other way might be helpful to unpack all of that. I know it can't be helped, but you know.
I'd be happy to join any meeting, or
fantastic.
yeah, you just let me know and I will. Yep.
Lovely. And I wondered whether capacity still was an issue, because I know it was the last time. So I don't know improvements been made, but it'd be good to have an update on that. And I wondered finally about the issue of, well, two bits. NCL, how we compare with them. Are they, you know, what is their performance? And that might be useful to have here. So hopefully we're, you know, performing comparably or better. And then what's your response to getting the mental health issues? We've got Ginika online addressed. I mean, that for me is the most important one. Thank you for the report, but what's the action to get mental health issues? Because it is health saying that this is a matter within health, and so I'd really like to know what's going on there.
Yeah, so currently we're liaising with the Commissioner, Vulnerable Children's Commissioner, she's also liaising with First Step, who provide who do the SDQ screening for for all children in care, strength and difficulty questionnaires, and also provide social work consultations and some initial screening for children, and offer support for the social workers that are what they call is a meeting with health professionals. Anybody around who's responsible for the child can come to the consultation meeting, where we talk about the child's journey and then decide what needs to happen. And they will offer some consultations with the child. If it's a new child into care, they can offer up to 6 consultation. We would like more work done on new children in care that are in crisis, or have more support for those children. And we're hoping that with some of the extra funding that will be able to be done, that First Step will be involved in doing some of that work. And especially where there's likely to be placement breakdown, and there's been lots of 3 or more placement moves within a year, to be doing but with children living anywhere in the country, not just in Haringey, to do more work in that area as well. But it is a gap, we've got meetings planned to meet up with First Step and also the Vulnerable Children's Commissioner to discuss further.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to provide some. To read a bit further interpretation of the report. I mean, the first thing to say is that vaccination coverage and dental achievement is, to a certain extent, neither here nor there when one's actually dealing with much more complex health and well-being issues. Not a great performance measure, and it doesn't really link to outcome later on. And I guess that those things are chosen as measures because they're easy to measure, whereas the other stuff is much more difficult. And the next thing to say is that, you know, the deficit in psychological, psychiatry, psychotherapy services for children in care is a reflection of a much greater, wider gap countrywide, you know, for all kids, and a lot's happened. You know, their needs have increased during the pandemic. In terms of what might make things change, you know, I don't think what we're looking for or what we want to promote is a sort of medicalized therapeutic intervention, because where they're placed and who their friends are and how they're valued, I think that those things underpin better. What we need to work out really is how everyone can come together. And in a way, you know, to what you were saying about the life story, you know, life story says, you know, how that child got to where they are now give some indication about, what can one do to sort of put them in a better place. But I mean, very concrete actions around mental health provision and support. I mean, that's something that, it's apparent to us, needs to be advanced. The question as to how it will happen, I think it needs to be jointly designed with social care, with the voluntary sector, because they play a very important role, and with others. So it's a complicated piece of work, and it's actually thinking through, well, actually, if one was going to look at these things, considering there's so many stakeholders and others involved, what would a process of designing something better look like?
Yeah, go on, Anne.
And I'm so sorry, but I invite you to lead us on that journey.
You walked yourself into
Because
that, Paul.
as the corporate parent of these children and young people, if they were our own children, we would be running at a pace to make those changes. So I mean it honestly, in social care, we can do the life story work, we can bring people together, we can do what we can do, but it's the health aspect, not the low-hanging fruit bits, it's that other bit that I really would, invite you to help us steer that course, and also to lobby for the changes that we need in a context of there isn't going to be a lot more money. So I'm really delighted that you're here, and I really do hope you take up the offer. And then I look forward to reports at every meeting so we can just see this flourish and grow. As a partnership. We are really here with you. That's a given. So I take that as a yes.
Ellen, did you want to come as well, Kristen? Yes. Ellen and then Kristen.
Thanks. I suppose that we'd all agree that we'd want to be designing something better, and that work, I hope, will be able to happen as a partnership. I mean, in the interim, I suppose my question is, who do we need to have around the table so we can ask them the questions to make something happen in the interim? Because that's always the issue. I mean, Anne said exactly what I was going to say. If it was my child, God forbid, that needed this kind of support, then they would be sick to the back teeth of me, because I would be relentless in pushing and pushing and pushing to get my child seen by somebody that might be able to help. And my concern always, with my experience over many years with health services, and this isn't about your team at all, that we're all aware that this is something that is way beyond your control in terms of who's got the answers to this, is that it's kind of always someone else's problem, and actually it isn't, it's health's problem. And so we need to know who is going to come around the table, or who should we invite around the table to ask questions about this.
Can I just come in? So I think it would be good to invite the Vulnerable Children's Commissioner, probably, who I'm sure would be very willing to come. Michelle Gumaran, yeah.
We need somebody Michelle's fantastic and she's such a support, but I think we need higher up. I don't know who the higher up person is. Is it Sarah Mansorelli, or is it Sarah McDonald Davis? Somebody who can absolutely help us shift this, because Michelle is already doing the best that she can.
Perhaps I could come in here. Oh.
Go on.
Thank
I
you.
think first you might need to hear from Ginika, and then I'll come in.
Okay, I didn't see your hand up, but it would be good if you contributed.
Thank you. So this is certainly something I'll take back to our lead for mental health. But what I will say is that the ICB is currently going through a change program. So there may well be some changes as to whom it is that will come back to discuss that with you.
And I think Ginika's sharing this with us at this stage, because with that change, the person that we would typically want to invite to come and address you is the role is going to shift. And so but I do think that you might find it helpful to have Clive Bradshaw I think it's Bradshaw, his surname, to come and talk to you about the CAMS data in respect of children in care, and also to come and talk about the conversations we've been having to ensure that the trauma that has been explained is shared in this room, that we set out what our plan is for that. So I know that my DCS is going to want someone far senior, and you might find that even that senior person is going to change.
There's a job title, whoever's in the seat.
Did you want to say something? Because you were sort of cut off.
No, I was just, I thought it might be useful to invite First Step here so that there could be an understanding by all the councillors about the work that they do, and also maybe some of the gaps can be addressed possibly. But yeah, no, I agree, commissioning, high-up commissioners need to be.
I've got just a couple of points.
Yeah.
I was going to be really mundane and ask about vaccinations, actually.
Yeah,
and it was really about unaccompanied minors. And what do you do to make a medical assessment? Because, you know, we've heard that polio has come back.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of measles, you know, it's all MMR, be difficult. So I was curious about that. So it's just very quick question, because I'd want to know that they had all their vaccines, these young people. And my second question really was, because we don't have any of the big hospitals in Haringey, do our young people have the same access as in the other boroughs in the ICB? Is it a level playing field? So those are my two questions.
Okay. Sorry.
So for the unaccompanied asylum seekers, there's a national program of catch-up immunisations, and all are referred to UCLH, which runs a specialist screening service, and that's done for all unaccompanied asylum seekers, regardless of their country of origin and their route. They're all referred to sexual health services as well. You mentioned that we don't have a teaching hospital equivalent within our borough, but we would make we would do the initial health assessment and then refer as necessary. So if a child, for example, does need a specialist service such as a teaching hospital or Great Ormond Street, we would make that referral, or we would refer to our local hospitals, so that's the North Mid or the Whittington, where we've got good links with both according to what they need. If they're out of borough, it is usually through their GP, but we would complete whatever initial assessment we can at the initial health assessment. So I don't think they're disadvantaged in any way that we don't have a teaching hospital, because we have good links and access to these. Thank you.
That's all right. We're on a mission with the ICB. Don't worry, Lynn. It's all right.
So it's timely that we bring before we bring to you the update on the fact that come October, that we will be moving to an Ofsted regime of registering all semi-independent units, that so that we so we can no longer have any ambiguity between unregistered and unregulated placement. An unregistered placement will be officially deemed in law as illegal, and thus as it's been, but it's tightened up. Unregulated will be only able to operate for children over the age of 16 until they're 16 to 18. But there will be requirements if they provide care needs. So sometimes we pay key workers a little extra to do key work sessions. When we drill down, they're doing a little bit more than that, particularly if there's children with learning difficulties and that sort of need. So they will be required to register, and there's a clear cut-off date. And if Ofsted have given a commitment to register within 10 weeks, but we know that that's probably something that's an aspiration, but it's going to be very challenging to do so. So if we take the Haringey context, we know that as of yesterday, we have 17 semi-independent providers in the borough. We now have 5 residential units, 3 of whom we have relationships with and 2 that we don't. And our mayor regularly gets contacted to come and open up other type units and provisions that we have no relationships with. So there has been some market conversations through our commissioning team and led by Caroline and Pauline Simpson and others to encourage them to develop their relationships with us. I mean, that's part of our longer term strategy, not to have children placed very far away. And we want to complete some conversations with our planning division, who has to give them permission to operate in our borough, but there is no legal requirement for planning to notify children or anybody else. So actually, Councillor Brabazon, it's really helpful when the mayor contacts me and says, can I go and speak at this resident, because I get to know that they're here. But we need a formal system in place. What that is going to mean, and why I particularly wanted to bring that item to you today, and there will be a paper that follows that sets this out, is we are expecting some other instability. So because we don't typically place a 15-year-old and under in a semi-independent unit unless we have a court order that enables that to happen. With the registration process and unintended consequences that we're going to see the market fold, because semi-independent providers cannot easily afford to go through the charges and the preparation for Ofsted registration. So at Ofsted, to be Ofsted registered, you must have a registered manager. You're looking at £60,000 a year for that post. You must have level 5 or as a very minimum for key work, level 3 qualified key workers in place. So there is a set of requirements that's going to cost a lot of the providers. So we can see this both as something that will create some volatility and unsettlement in the market, but we're also seeing it as an opportunity, because I think that for our 17 semi-independent providers, we know only 5 have started the process. The others, I think, may be wanting to operate with other local authorities to keep themselves up managing under inherent jurisdiction through the courts, but the bulk of them will need to make some serious decisions about folding their businesses. Unless we're able to, like other local authorities, step in and do some work with them. But we also don't have the funding to take them through the finances attached to being regulated. So I wanted to draw that to your attention. At the moment, we're keeping a close eye on our stability, and it's relevant because the majority of children coming into care are your under 5s and your adolescents. And so the adolescents are the young people that are most difficult to place and to stabilise and to support because of this hidden trauma often, and still some adultificated ways of translating their behaviour and categorising them. So this conversation with CAMHS and working differently if they can, or looking for how we can have a trauma-informed response from the plethora of work that the mental health team, the mental health services is doing under the NHS could never be more critical than it is now. So I'm drawing it to your attention. There's a paper to follow to set all of that out.
Bev, quick question.
Thank you. I just want, well, bring you a minute. I just wanted to say, I think it is very timely that we brought this to the attention of the committee, and we'll hear about it again as perhaps an update when it has all, because although it's 17 providers, doesn't sound like a huge lot. They're not any people we really know in it. They're all other private providers, registered companies, house, who knows. And now it's being regulated, we need to be on top of it. So thank you, Bev, for the update.
Thanks. I mean, again, it's useful to know because a lot of our adolescents have very unstable placements. Is there any scope for, like, for example, pooling resources between these providers? I know they're independent, but having like a joint manager or joint resources so that we do keep our provision within borough where possible.
We were hopeful that when we started some work with the semi-independent providers in 2021, when we first got wind of Ofsted's intention, it's discouraging that only 5 chose to continue. And I think that because they are largely independent individuals running their own enterprise, it's for helping them to form relationships and join their resources has been a challenge. So the 5 that we wanted to work with remain as individuals. They're not forming alliances. And we'll, as I say, I think some of them will stay to have children under inherent jurisdiction, and then some will fold. But we'll keep an eye on those properties. Largely, they're not properties owned, they're rented.
We'll watch this space. Yeah.